Luke 18, 1-8. Two versions, one read by Barbara and one by Laurie. Thanks very much.
Then Jesus told them a parable about their need to pray always and not to lose heart. He said, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor had respect for people. In that city there was a widow who kept coming to him and saying, grant me justice against my accuser. For a while he refused, but later he said to himself, though I have no fear of God and no respect for anyone, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will grant her justice, so that she may not wear me out by continually coming. And the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God grant justice to the chosen ones who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long in helping them? I tell you, he will quickly grant justice to them. And yet, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?
The story of the persistent widow. Jesus told them a story showing that it was necessary for them to pray consistently and never quit. He said, there was once a judge in some city who never gave God a thought and cared nothing for the people. A widow in that city kept after him. My rights are being violated. Protect me. He never gave her the time of day. But after this went on and on, he said to himself, I care nothing what God thinks, and even less what people think. But because the widow won't quit badgering me, I'd better do something and see that she gets justice. Otherwise, I'm going to end up beaten black and blue by her pounding. Then the master said, do you hear what that judge, corrupt as he is saying? So what makes you think God won't step in and work justice for his chosen people who continue to cry out for help? Won't he stick up for them? I assure you, he will. He will not drag his feet. But how much of that kind of persistent faith will the Son of Man find on the earth when he returns?
I like the reading from the Message version because its fairly literal translation reminds us that Jesus told parables to shock people into considering seriously their circumstances. Well, our circumstances. And maybe he used startling humour. It's pretty tongue-in-cheek, this business of the judge who does not fear God or worry about people and what they think of him, and yet decides he had better do something before the widow socks him in the eye. Although we don't know the circumstances of the woman's case, we can assume from the judge's eventual response that there is some need to address. And this against the backdrop of a long tradition that widows should be cared for. But remember the stories of Tamar, Ruth, Naomi, and others. A widow might have to be assertive. She might be revealed as an agent of change. The woman in Luke certainly does stick up for herself, doesn't she? She is prepared to take on the establishment until it bends justice towards her. Now, although we note the feistiness of how she's depicted, let's not overlook the power dynamics in the story. See how this is a woman alone. She's the victim of disadvantage and unfair treatment, pain, suffering, not being heard, feeling neglected and undervalued. I think we're not told the precise nature of her grievance, so that her experience can stand for a wide array of what people go through when power sits somewhere else. The widow's plight reminds us that the power to overturn disadvantage can be withheld. Many readers of this story instinctively contrast the unjust judge with God, the good judge. and they sometimes get tied up in knots interpreting the parable. But I think it's much likelier that the judge in the story reflects everyday examples of a power imbalance: assumptions, self-absorption, prejudice, dismissiveness, social and economic disparity that seems locked in and worsening, apparently faceless systems that do not have a way to register and address an individual case that demands attention. Any of these could be the judge who will not make space for the one who is waiting for justice. And nor does the judge take account of one waiting with the one who waits. The judge cannot sense the presence of God. We hear a couple of times that he pays no attention to God. Where God is in the story locates God in the struggles of life, in the hurts and endurance, in the persistence and courage to keep speaking up, in the commitment to pray and never quit, even though the wait is long. There is God. God in the confidence that demands justice even when it is not forthcoming. God supporting the vision for change that results in actual change because the persistent ones somehow find the strength to keep coming back, day by day, to demand that something be different for them. Jesus tells this story to locate God with the waiting one. Many scholars suggest that the explanatory verses at the end are Luke's words, not a record of the story as Jesus told it, and I agree with that. I think it's Luke who added to his source material the words, "So what makes you think God won't step in and work for justice for his chosen people who continue to cry out for help?" God has been there all along, with the widow in her circumstances of need and determination. I think God in the parable is in the validation of the woman for claiming her rights, for claiming her worth. "Protect me," she demands. Years ago, I heard the American singer Bernice Johnson Reagan talking in Auckland. She's a former civil rights activist. Well, I guess she still is a civil rights activist. And she was talking about the churches in the south of America and how they were set up as institutions of separation and discrimination. She paused and she asked if we were puzzled as to why black people had gone to church in high numbers and with such dedication. And she said something like, "We went to church because there we knew we were sane." We went to church because there we knew we were sane. She paused again and then she sang to close that segment of her talk. It can be surprising, can't it, how people find their place in a system of oppression. Well, Luke has it more right when he adds that God will stick up for his people. He will not drag his feet. We don't know why justice is often slow and hard to achieve, but God is not absent from the struggle. And although we can't see when or how, our vision might be that injustice has to end. It eventually has to end because of the concerted will for it not to hold sway. I'm reminded of those verses in 2 Timothy. "At my first offence, no one came to my support, but all deserted me. May it not be counted against them. But the Lord stood by me and gave me strength, so that through me the message might be fully proclaimed, and all the Gentiles might hear it. So I was rescued from the lion's mouth. The Lord will rescue me from every evil attack, and save me for his heavenly kingdom. To him be the glory forever and ever. Amen." And so, if Jesus came back to earth today, would he find us confident about that? that injustice will have its ending? It's another startling moment as that question confronts us. When it matters, are we persistent in staying the course with God? Yikes, that's a thought. That God is turning to us with our little mustard seeds of faith, and that they might be enough. Blessings upon us as we play around with the parable and allow it to tease us into feeling that we might be the answer God is waiting for. Amen.